Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Sports Speak, episode 127. I'm Eddie Kalegi.
And I'm Tim Moore.
Lot to talk about. March, in my opinion, maybe besides October, my second favorite time in sports. NASCAR's just getting started. Baseball around the horizon. March Madness. By the way, we'll have a special episode. Alec Proudhamel is joining me on Wednesday. We'll be breaking down the March Madness bracket. I wish Rutgers was a part of it. Sadly, they are not, but it's going to be a fun tournament nonetheless. But the NFL has really taken center stage because free agency, we are right in the thick of it. Franchise tag deadline was last week. And as we record this on Tuesday, March 13th, Monday, March 13th, a lot is happening because the quarterback market, the dominoes are falling one by one. It really started last week when Derek Carr went to the New Orleans Saints. Then the Giants and Seahawks decided to commit to Daniel Jones and Geno Smith long term, settling those three. And then today things have gotten crazy. Jimmy Garoppolo heading to the Las Vegas Raiders. The Jets have cut ties with Mike White. He goes to the Miami Dolphins. Aaron Rodgers, we're still in a holding pattern. Is he staying in Green Bay? Is he going to the Jets? Is he playing at all? So much to break down, and we're going to roll right into it. Let's start with the franchise tag deadline last week because we have not had an episode in 2 weeks. And I'm just going to start with this. The quarterback market has gotten ridiculous with quarterbacks getting overpaid. I don't want myself to sound like a Giants hater who is simply targeting the Giants and Daniel Jones, because they are certainly not the only team that has overpaid for a quarterback in the last couple of years. But Daniel Jones in one season does not deserve $82 million of guaranteed money after what he had done in the past 4 years. Geno Smith had barely stayed in the league for 9 years, has one good year, and now is getting paid a ridiculous amount of money by Seattle. That's kind of the way it goes. For the Giants, they did what they wanted to do. They bring back Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. They wanted to run it back with those two, a consistent system with a coach who proved himself this past year. Maybe they can make things even better next season. But I don't know. I feel like there were better ways to do this. And I made this argument on my Rutgers show. You may not agree with me. I don't think Saquon Barkley is that important to the future for the New York Giants. I just don't. When you look back at the last 15 Super Bowls, the average salary of the starting running back has been around $1.2 million. Star running backs aren't going deep. Teams that invest in other positions do, and they fill the position with someone young. So I don't really know about franchise tagging him, and I don't know about giving Daniel Jones the 4-year deal. So Tim, you're the Giants fan here. What are your impressions?
Well, actually, I'm not really opposed to the four-year deal given to Daniel Jones. And to be honest with you, in the middle of last year, I said, hey, we're going to be reaching realms for Daniel Jones where, to be honest with you, again, I told you right now, or I should say, I think during the start of the offseason, but after the Giants got eliminated, I said, hey, I could take Daniel Jones 4 years, 160 million. And while granted, it's a little bit more expensive than that, I just kind of view it like this, to be honest with you. Um, the Giants had to make a decision. And I know the 81 million or the 82 million, whatever it is, over the first 2 years sounds a little bit outrageous. But realistically speaking, from a contractual standpoint, it kind of makes sense in how the Giants approached it. Next season is going to be, I think, the biggest telling tale, not just this season, because while the Giants are starting to have space to start building core free agents, to really start building themselves into a team this year, there's going to be a lot of open cap space next year where, yeah, you're going to have to make a lot of good, a lot of big decisions, but there's going to be a lot of contracts the Giants are getting off the books going into next year, which makes me more optimistic that you can even push for more free agents and start focusing less on draft capital and more on bringing superstars in. Leonard Williams, that's the big one. He's talked about reconstruction. Oh my goodness, reconstructing his contract. And I hope he does do that this year. For the record, we don't know what's going to happen with Dexter Lawrence, but in terms of those two contracts, you'd have to assume those are going to be some really heavy deals that the Giants are going to get off the books going into next season. In regards to Saquon Barkley, I understand that the value of a running back is not that high, but I also view the value of Saquon Barkley to not be like any other running back in the NFL. Very few running backs can produce on both sides of the football, both catching and running, like Saquon Barkley does. And I'm not saying he's the answer. He's, that he deserves to be paid an absurd amount of money. I do emphasize the availability aspect to be a huge factor, in my opinion, to why he shouldn't be paid as high as what he was looking for. But I feel like realistically speaking, the franchise tag getting put on him is huge. Not because he keeps him as a New York Giant and you settled the contract issue with Daniel Jones, but realistically speaking, you have to remember there are still teams that can go out here because it's a non, it's essentially the rule is that he can still take contract offers because it's not exclusive. So, with that being said, if there's a team crazy enough that wants a superstar running back and wants to offer Saquon Barkley the money he's looking for, well, guess what? The Giants can gladly let him go, and they get 2 first-round picks out of it. And while that's not the realistic, or realistically what's going to happen for Saquon, I'd like to emphasize at least that decision to me makes more sense than the Giants turning around, getting a deal for Daniel Jones, getting a deal for Saquon Barkley, and then they have their hands tied because of the fact they don't know what free agent they can build around. I feel that it's a one step at a time process. Of course, also that makes Saquon Barkley again next year. I mentioned Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams as free agents, but of course that makes Saquon Barkley a free agent. I just think overall, to be honest with you, and this is the last thing I'll say about that in that regards, I feel the Giants keeping Dexter Lawrence, goodness, Saquon Barkley as a franchise tag, and then turning around and re-signing Sterling Shepard to a practical veterans minimal. To me, that tells you, Eddie, that the Giants really are trying to pursue Odell Beckham Jr. because I feel Odell would not want to be here if Shep wasn't here or Saquon, just because of a personal relationship standpoint. And he's been very vocal about that, in my opinion, as much as the media may not be able to play that. So even if we don't land Odell, I still feel that was mandatory to bring him in. So I just think overall it was a must. Daniel Jones at least knows he has one weapon, but I'm eager to see what other weapons the Giants are going to bring. Obviously, the big thing defensively, the Giants were expected to bring in Tremaine Evans. That ended up not happening. He's surprisingly a Chicago Bear, which I know we're talking about franchise tagging right now, but I think that's arguably the biggest surprise of free agency, just because, I mean, who would have thought he would have been the answer to replace Roquan Smith after he got traded away for the Bears? I just didn't exactly see it, but he's getting a boatload of money, and congrats to him. I mean, definitely deserving for what he did back in Buffalo.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll touch more on some of the other free agency signings in just a couple of minutes. But finishing off on the Giants, my whole concern with this is Saquon Barkley, and you touched on the availability, how much he really deserves a chance. I guess that's what the franchise tag does. It buys you a little bit of time. But the tough spot I think the Giants were in is that your 2 core guys are both situations where I don't think you can really commit to them for a long period of time necessarily, because Daniel Jones has not proven the ability and Saquon Barkley has not proven the availability, but they do have the opportunity bringing back with the coach of the year. And there's been so much turnover with the offensive systems since Jones and Barkley were drafted that now you have the consistency there. Maybe it'll work out. We'll see. But I think the overall motto here is that quarterbacks are getting ridiculously overpaid and it's just driving up the market. And the Giants are just one of those teams that kind of had to do it because that's the way quarterbacks are expected to be paid at this point.
Right. And I'll say the last thing I'll say about it is this, yes, the market is outrageous, but I also feel that cap space and cap room as the future goes on because of this deal with quarterbacks is only going to be more readily available for teams. Because let's be honest, the New York Giants are not going to be the only team that has this issue. I look at the Jets, for example, we're trying urgently to bring in Aaron Rodgers, and they're going to face a big deal as well where Rodgers is on a big contract and they'll have to answer cap issues. And it's, again, I mean, of course they're trying to avoid this whole stuff with what happened with the Deshaun Watson with Lamar Jackson of, getting fully guaranteed money. And that's its own monster as it is. But rather the point is how I would view it for the New York Football Giants. It's as simple as this. It's 2 years or bust. You bring in Saquon for one, you have him guaranteed for one. Really, the Giants are not going to be held accountable after year two. They could cut Daniel Jones going into year three if they truly wanted to in terms of liabilities. So I think the Giants, again, with Joe Shane, made a very, very smart decision on how they approach this in terms of financial purposes. And I really do think, again, I said going into last season about how I felt confident with Coach Dable and what to expect. I'm not saying the Giants are going to come out and dominate this next season because we don't even know what the team looks like yet. But I'm very confident this franchise moving forward is starting to develop that culture it needs and the leadership it needs from the front office to play consistent winning football in the NFC East, let alone the NFL.
So let's talk about the other team from New York. We're recording this 6:30 p.m. Eastern time on Monday. So depending on when we upload this, there could be more updated news. So I'm going to try not to be dated with what I ask. I'm going to instead frame it as, is Aaron Rodgers potentially a good fit for the New York Jets? So the Jets right now, they are done with Mike White. So Zach Wilson is their quarterback on the roster. Mike White has gone over to be Tua's backup in Miami. So the Jets have passed up on potential quarterbacks that I think would have fit their system well. I think Derek Carr would have been a fine pickup for the Jets. He's been a productive NFL quarterback for the past decade. Jimmy Garoppolo, we have seen what he's been able to do with weapons. That's what excites me about him with Las Vegas. Problem is, it appears Davante Adams doesn't see it that way and is going to want out of Vegas. So I don't think he's going to be there for it. But Garoppolo, I think, would have been a great fit for the Jets. And now they're really boxing themselves in to, they need to get Aaron Rodgers. And if they don't, they are in danger, because besides that, they're not getting Lamar Jackson. So, I mean, what, Jameis Winston, hoping somebody falls in the draft, or going with Zach Wilson? That's basically their options at this point. So it's really do or die with Aaron Rodgers. Now, Aaron had a down year last season with Green Bay. There was a lot of turmoil there, rumors about whether or not he was going to retire, a very young receiving core. But before that, he had back-to-back MVPs and deep runs in the NFC playoffs. So moving to an AFC East conference, potentially, that's loaded. You've already got Josh Allen there. Dolphins were talented to start the season, and the Patriots always find a way to win 8 games now, even without Tom Brady. Where do you see this, and do you see it potentially being a good fit where Rodgers could make the Jets contenders, or is this the Brett Favre move all over again?
Everyone keeps on comparing this to the Brett Favre move, and I just genuinely don't get it, because in my opinion, Aaron Rodgers is much better of a quarterback than Brett Favre, in my opinion, ever was. Now, don't get me wrong, Brett Favre is a gunslinger. He's a Hall of Famer in his own respect, and he was a good quarterback, but Aaron Rodgers is a unique phenomenon. I mean, we're talking about someone that could throw 40 touchdowns in a year, and maybe at most. Granted, last year a little bit different for most interceptions he's had in his career since what I give is his rookie year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where most interceptions. But Aaron Rodgers in a given year could throw 40 touchdowns and 5 interceptions in a season. And I understand he's aging. I really think the injury last year, really, as much as he didn't want to play it off, maybe derailed him a little bit. But I think a healthy, motivated Aaron Rodgers in a new environment. I know it's New York media and things are going to be crazy, but I really do buy in Aaron Rodgers being New York Jets. And to be honest, for the New York Jets, there's no reason why you shouldn't want to go for Aaron Rodgers. It's getting a top 5 quarterback in this league, if not arguably, I still think Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league right now, not because he won MVP, but in my opinion of what you could have said 2 years ago was the best quarterback in the league of Aaron Rodgers, back-to-back MVPs. He gives you the best chance of winning a Super Bowl. And I understand, the love for Derek Carr, but listen, Derek Carr is a quarterback that has equivalent statistics to Ryan Tannehill, yet Ryan Tannehill is not getting talked about for this New York Jets job, and he's getting cut from all ties. And yes, I understand you compare the Raiders to being, a not a good organization as compared to what the Tennessee Titans were with Ryan Tannehill. But I also view it as the fact of, Derek Carr's been in the league forever, and none of his numbers have really, except for the 1 year where he got hurt, going into that playoff run that he didn't even play in and was a borderline MVP. None of his numbers really jumped out at you as, being a top tier elite quarterback. I don't feel he gives a better chance for the New York Jets than Aaron Rodgers does. On the contrary, I feel the Jets, honest to God, best opportunity. I know Jets fans don't want to hear this because they're so set on Aaron Rodgers, but if Rodgers chooses to sit all this time and not, I know they're talking about Miami, but that makes no sense to me. The guy I really, truly want under center for the New York Jets is Tom Brady. And I view it like this. You talk about a guy that can get the respect of the locker room and take control immediately and change your direction to put yourself at the best chance of not just making the playoffs, maybe winning a Super Bowl. Tom Brady is that guy. And I know the Bucs played awful last year, but I'd like to remind you, Tom Brady still won a division. Tom Brady still made the playoffs, even at his worst. And to be honest with you, despite his age, I don't think Tom Brady, if he was focused, could have any worse of a year than he had last season. His season was still better than 50% of the quarterbacks in the league. So with that being said, I buy the move for Rodgers, but I also feel the next option shouldn't be some mid-tier quarterback like Ryan Tannehill or whoever else is available. You should go right for the cream of the crop and get him out of retirement. And that's taking the guy that tortured you for years of Tom Brady.
Do you really think he'd come out of retirement again? I mean, he seems like he's for real this time. I don't really see him coming out for a second time and re-entering the flame and then having to go up against New England in the AFC East. I don't know. I don't really buy that happening. One.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't know. It's like I feel like Tom Brady could come back. And again, I'm not trying to say I get Brett Favre vibes by him, but I feel that Tom, you know, he wants to go out a winner. He wants to go out a Super Bowl champion, and the thing is too, he's pushing his broadcasting gig that he, initially signed on to, being a part of the booth. He's pushing it back year after year after year now, it feels like.
Yeah,
And
but I kind of feel like that's because he has a compulsive obsession with football, and the only way he can really retire is if he stays like completely away from it for a year. I mean, he lost his family over playing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean,
but
yeah.
what else does he have to lose? Play for the team that has won nothing in forever, their best quarterback in history, which was the other point going back to Rodgers real quick. Why not get Aaron Rodgers? Aaron Rodgers on a consistent basis can throw for 4,000 passing yards a year. Joe Namath had a mediocre 4,000-yard season, what would be compared to today's NFL terms. And the fact of the matter is, Aaron Rodgers could dominate statistically on a bad season what Joe Namath did for back then. Granted, back then, what he did was historic, but modern day football, yeah. And I'd like to remind you of this as well. Only one player in NFL history, or say Jets history, has thrown for 30 touchdowns in a season. And do you know who that quarterback is?
I don't know. Who is it?
Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Really?
Nobody's talking about how Ryan Fitzpatrick had one of the best seasons of Jets in Jets history of all time. Which
Well,
goes to my point is, when you put it like this, there's no reason why a Tom Brady or an Aaron Rodgers, granted of retirement, couldn't break all those records in a single season. A single season. Ryan Tannehill's not going to get that done for you. There's no other quarterback on the market that's going to do that for you. Not even Jameis Winston on a 30 for 30 season could do that for you. So again, I know the question of, will Tom come out of retirement? I still feel Tom has that itch. I just still feel it. I don't understand the Miami Dolphins talk. Tua played borderline MVP football when he was healthy last year. There should be no topic of discussion of him being benched for Tom Brady. That team has what it needs. Tom Brady, though, being a New York Jet after losing everything, so you say, in his life, I'm just saying, there's nothing else better to do than a team that's lost everything over the last 40, 50 years to turn around and become a Super Bowl champion and proving why he is the greatest of all time just one more time.
Well, let's go to a team that's lost everything in the month of December the last couple of years, the Baltimore Ravens, because Lamar Jackson has been hurt. And that's the other moving piece per se, but not really any movement. All we've heard is teams saying they're not going after Lamar Jackson. So Wednesday, he, with his exclusive franchise tag, can begin to negotiate with other teams, and the Ravens, via the franchise tag, will have the opportunity to match those offers. But we've already seen many teams that have quarterback needs, including ones that aren't even in position to draft a good quarterback out of this year's class unless they move up in the draft, saying, no, we're not going after Lamar Jackson. So I feel like we're in such a weird spot. Number one, Lamar Jackson should have an agent at this point, and I think that's really holding him back from getting the contract and the treatment that he deserves. I know we have problems with agents. As both of us are baseball fans, we know that Scott Boras and the other agents can be way too intrusive in the game. But for the player's standpoint, for proper representation and to get the money they deserve, they really need an agent, someone who can vouch for them financially. So that's number one with Lamar Jackson. Number two, there's still the stigma that he can't throw the ball and that he's a glorified running back, which I think is not true. However, there are shortcomings with Lamar Jackson. He's gotten hurt each of the last 2 years and missed significant time. He's only won one playoff game. Besides the MVP season, the full year numbers year to year don't necessarily jump off the page. And then the third aspect here is the Ravens' philosophy. So I know Ozzie Newsome doesn't have the same say he did back in the day, but Eric DeCosta is now the GM. Eric DeCosta's been there in the organization since 1996 and was there for both Super Bowl victories. Who were the Super Bowl winning quarterbacks? Trent Dilfer, Joe Flacco. Neither of them were making a lot of money. Neither of them were flashy quarterbacks. Neither of them were major financial commitments. The Ravens focused on their defense and building around them. I know Baltimore has a lot of flaws right now. They still have a great defense and they can bring in other weapons. But I kind of sense this as the potential that if a team wants Lamar Jackson, the Ravens will listen and maybe they'll let him go because they have the philosophy that you don't need to overpay for a quarterback to win. So Wednesday will be when this all starts. By the end of the week, Tim, where do you see Lamar Jackson? Do you think he's going back to Baltimore or will another team jump in?
Well, I have two answers. If Aaron Rodgers is not a New York Jet, I'm fully inclined to believe that there's going to be a contract offered to Lamar Jackson, and that could be an option outside of what I just mentioned with Tom Brady. On the contrary, I don't know. It's very hard to say because while I feel like this is all going to become nothing, he's going to stay in Baltimore, he's going to do nothing again next year. I also feel like he's going to become a Washington Commander. I just still feel that he's going to go somewhere that, is not really a good franchise, but he's going to go and he's going to take the money. And I honestly do truthfully think, I know a lot of teams are trying to hold back. I understand the aspect of an agent, and I understand that. But Lamar also getting his vibe is that he wants his decision to be purely on him and no other motivating factor around it, which is why he's being his own agent. And also the aspect of he feels he's purely educated himself in the business of why he should be his own agent. So to me, I can respect that aspect. But at the same time, I just feel that he's going for all the money he physically can. And I'm going to be truthfully honest with you. I know the numbers don't jump out the page in terms of passing stats, but his rushing ability is so unique. His playmaking ability is so unique that I just feel that we're talking about all these teams right now that aren't offering, you can't comprehend it. I guarantee you, as these free agents continue to come off the board, there's going to be a team that's going to want Lamar Jackson, and they're going to offer him as much money as they can. May not be a fully guaranteed contract, but pretty close. And I can guarantee you somebody's going to fall for it. Somebody's going to do it, and they may regret it. They probably will regret it. Just like how the Browns are clearly regretting Deshaun Watson's fully guaranteed contract, which, by the way, they have already restructured going into this year to make cap space. But the point is that I feel like there's going to be a team that will fall for it, and it's only going to be a matter of time. I wouldn't say it's going to come around Wednesday, but I'd say come around the end of the week, you'll have a team that's going to fall for it.
So let's move into our flaming hot topics. We've got a few things to touch on the last 15 minutes of the show. We'll stay with the NFL first, some NASCAR WBC on the way. But let's talk the rest of free agency. You alluded to Tremaine Edmonds. That's a huge move for the Bears. We'll talk about the Bears and moving the pick in a couple of minutes. But besides that, our biggest surprises or under the radar deals from free agency. I'll start. I think there's another one that people aren't really talking about because they knew he was going to go. They just didn't know where. Javon Hargrave going to the San Francisco 49ers adds to what already is an elite defensive unit that can really help carry them. And their quarterback room right now, they suddenly have Sam Darnold along with Brock Purdy, who's going to have the Tommy John, and then you got Trey Lance. So the Niners are going to need their defense again to make a deep run. The Eagles, they could afford this because DT is the position they have a surplus because Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham aren't going anywhere. And they have two young players they can control in Nakobe Dean and Jordan Davis that they still have full control over. So they could afford to lose Hargrave. But this is a big move for San Francisco to bring him in after he had a huge year and not paying him all that much money either. Having him and adding him to an already stacked front seven on that Niners defense in a conference that once again is going to have a weak set of quarterbacks. This is notable. So, Tim, is it Edmonds or is it something else that really jumps out for you?
Well, Edmonds definitely jumps out to me, but I'm actually going to say there's going to be another one that really jumps out to me that nobody's talking about, and that's Jesse Bates going to the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, this is somebody that's a very good safety, can play very, very top tier level football in that strong safety position. And for the Atlanta Falcons, let's be honest, it feels like every year since 2016, we've been talking about, man, this defense needs to get healthier, it needs to get better, it needs a better secondary. And Bates is somebody that can be healthy. He can play good football. And I truthfully do think that he's a very, very massive addition for this Atlanta Falcons team that's amidst of a rebuild. Of course, they're still looking for that pure quarterback option and offensive option as well after trading away Calvin Ridley. But their defense needs the first step up, and I think this is a good first step for them. Again, I'm not saying he's going to be the answer for them being a direct turnaround to being a winning football team, but it's a good first start, and getting him in the door is definitely what the Falcons needed.
So the other big move regards the draft. It came on Friday. The Chicago Bears, who had the number one pick, traded down, but they got an absolute haul back. And this is notable because there's been some trades in the NFL recently where teams haven't gotten all that much. The Rams traded Jalen Ramsey. They got a third rounder and a backup tight end. The Bears trade down from 1 to 9. They get that 9th pick, plus a second rounder, plus a second and a third in future years, and DJ Moore, which gives Justin Fields a weapon. So I think this is huge for the Bears. Not only have they made some great moves in free agency to bolster the defense, they've been maybe the most active team over the last few days, and they have done so much to improve that roster. DJ Moore, maybe the most underrated wide receiver in the NFL, now gets to work with Fields, who has had no weapons over the last 2 years. Darnell Mooney cannot be your top receiver, and now you have Moore there. This also gives Fields a fresh set of confidence before OTAs. So this means that he is going to be feeling good that the Bears have put faith in him to be their top quarterback, be their guy for the next several years. So the Bears making this move, now they have a number 9 overall pick, plus they have another second round pick. So they can get 3 studs in the first 60 picks of this draft, which could really help that team. So what do you make of this move for Chicago? And then for Carolina, who need a quarterback with Frank Reich and really don't know what direction they're going to go, because to me, all 4 quarterbacks have flaws. Bryce Young, size. CJ Stroud, history of Ohio State QBs. Will Levis, just not really an established name. And Anthony Richardson, you can be a great athlete all you want. You can be Usain Bolt. You can jump in the air, but you got to be able to throw the football too. So all 4 of them have their own flaws. But for the Bears and the Panthers, what's your reaction to this trade?
Yeah, Frank Reich is already starting off his Panthers tenure just like how it is in Indianapolis, where it was an absolute joke, in my opinion. And listen, I think he's a decent head coach, but you can't be having these horrific trades left and right. The Bears, listen, this is going to be a trade I think we're going to look back and we're just going to laugh about, because the Bears are starting to do something that to be honest with you, I thought they were going to do about a season or two ago when they first got Justin Fields, is that they're going to start building this draft capital along with already having the capital to go out and make moves. The other thing too, you have to remember, they still have Chase Claypool, right? Who they traded for last year.
Yes.
So you mix about that receiving core with DJ Moore. It's going to be a lot better of an option. Of course, Darnell Mooney as well. But the Bears are going to be very active in the free agent market still. Of course, they just got Edmonds, but they're not going to be done with that. And the fact of the matter is, I truthfully think, yes, they have pick number 9 right now, Eddie, in this draft. But I still feel, and it's a very strong possibility, you could see the Bears trade back again into the middle of the first round, give themselves more draft capital for next year. And I can almost guarantee you the fact that this team is going to be a lot better because, again, it needs a lot more needs going into, just like the Giants, how I talked about going into 2024 as compared to 2023. They're making the right steps. And I still, for the record, don't know how the offense is going to look. I still truthfully don't feel Justin Fields is that good of a quarterback, but this gives you that opportunity for analysis of what's going to happen. But for the Bears, I mean, they literally stole somebody who was a quote unquote elite level receiver. We'll see if that's true when he plays in Chicago, because he had a very underwhelming year this year, and you loaded him up with picks. To me, I just don't understand what Carolina is thinking. But hey, I mean, the Panthers, if you're going to go get Bryce Young or whoever it is, congratulations. I just really hope they're the answer. And I'm going to be honest with you, this draft to me in the quarterback class does look underwhelming. So I'm very confident that the answer is going to be no.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the draft next month, but I am on board with you on that. One saving grace for the Panthers, their roster was a mess. They traded their best player last year, and they were still in contention to win the division in week 17. And the NFC South certainly hasn't gotten any better so far. So that's their one benefit here. Flaming topic number 3, let's go to NASCAR. William Byron saved by a caution, and Kevin Harvick, heartbreak at Phoenix. Byron with a great drive. Rudy Fugle, the great call with 2 tires. Second straight win for Hendrick and Byron. Chevy has won all 4. How impressive has Byron been through these first 4 weeks? And is he really, maybe is this the breakout year for Byron, or is it too early to say?
I think it's going to be a very good year for William Byron, but I also still feel it is too early to say because William Byron led so many laps last year and had a really good start to the year last year. And just like Alex Bowman, faded into the summertime like they typically do. So I truthfully think that what's the difference from this year and last year? And for the record, I said before the year that Hendrick and especially I felt Bowman in particular was going to have a much better year in terms of consistency. I still feel that same way about William Byron. I think that he's going to have a good year, but the fact of the matter is, how do they battle through the summer? Because Hendrick, of course, preps all year long for the beginning of the year, and a lot of these tracks you're going to see twice. I want to see what happens and what the points look like once we start getting about 15, 16 races in. I think that'll test the true tale. But for the record, I do think William Byron wins a lot more than what he's won now to this point in the season. I could see him winning 4 or 5 races on the year. But the fact of the matter is, it's definitely surprising that it's this early, but at the same time, it's not a surprise. I think that Team Hendrick's done a very good job, and the way they've put themselves in position, even without Chase Elliott, to get 4 drivers in the top 10 yesterday, 1 through 3 the week prior. You have the 48 who hasn't won a race as the points leader, Kyle Larson, who looks determined to win a race and looks very good this year, as we anticipated from the start of the year. Looks like a title threat, and to add Byron on that, this is going to be a really good year for Team Hendrick.
Yeah, kudos to Hendrick. Off the track distractions with Chase Elliott's leg fracture while snowboarding last week, but the fact that they've put it all together, get all their cars in the top 10 is huge.
Can I say one more thing too? That whatever, if there's a penalty that comes out as well, because of the whole Louvre situation, for the record, I don't think this derails Hendrick at all. I still think Phoenix proved up the 5 and 24 that they're just so fast. Yes, teams are going to catch up, but I just truthfully don't think this is going to derail Hendrick. Hendrick's done their fair share of research, and I think they're ready to go for a grind this year and really are surpassing expectations.
Yeah, well, you can always follow our picks on Twitter at SportsSpeak Live. I've had a terrible start. Thankfully, I got at least some points from Joey Logano last.
It almost looked bad, though. when
I
Logano
know.
went down the lap, I'm like, oh no, not again, Eddie.
But you know what? He recovered, especially in that last restart. So I'll take it. I gotta climb baby steps, but what a horrible start to the year. DNFs for my picks the first 3 races, including last place with Logano at Vegas. But follow on Twitter at SportsBeak Live. Me, Tim, Drew, and Eric are part of that. Final couple minutes. Let's touch on the World Baseball Classic because I can get heated about it because I'm not a fan of the World Baseball Classic. And people try to compare it to the World Cup and build it up. It's just not. The World Cup, at least for soccer, you have a global stage where there are teams from different continents that can contend. That is not the case in baseball. There are only major level leagues in the United States, a couple Latin American countries, and Japan. And how can I prove that? When you look at the rosters. Why is Trace Thompson playing for Great Britain? Why is Marcus Stroman, who played for the U.S. in 2017, now playing for Puerto Rico this time around? I think it's really a stretch at times where baseball tries to make the World Baseball Classic a big deal, tries to level the playing field. But when you're doing that, this is not really a world championship at all if you just have guys from America that are getting thrown on other teams to create a competitive balance. And that's why it's even more embarrassing that America is struggling and then loses to Mexico and struggled at the beginning of the game against Great Britain and Vance Worley. Are you kidding me? America has such a stacked roster, but that's the problem. There are only about 3 or 4 teams who can really contend for a championship, and it's really hard to take it seriously. Plus, you have the injuries aspect. I do not blame any manager that has held back some pitchers from participating. You're a Yankee fan. You've seen it with Nestor Cortez, hurt himself while trying out and trying to get ready for WBC. It's not worth it, especially at the beginning of the year, and baseball is a regimented sport. Max Scherzer was talking about it yesterday. You have to get into the groove as the season goes on, and a playoff game versus a regular season game, a pitcher approaches it completely differently. There was a lot of unnecessary wear and tear on the arms of these pitchers early on in March when they're not fully ramped up, pitching in a game with the atmosphere that would be more like an October game. So I'm not a fan of the World Baseball Classic. I got one more minute for you, Tim, so maybe you can chime in and share your thoughts.
Well, I like it. To be honest with you, I like the World Baseball Classic. I think it gives you a little bit of a vibe, more than really what the Olympics does, because the Olympics happen in the middle of the season. So I truthfully do think this is MLB's version of the Olympics, whether you like it or not. And yes, while I do agree, it's not as big, worldwide, and that what your background is a little bit subjective. I think that it could be a good thing for baseball. Of course, the aspect of injury is always worrisome, but I don't know what to say in regards to Team US. It's a little bit embarrassing when Trey Turner sits on the bench and that you have a lot of good guys there that could play. But to be honest with you, it's always going to be circled around 4 dominant places: Japan, Dominican Republic, US, Puerto Rico, and so on. And for the record, I think Japan wins the World Baseball Classic this year. They just look really good in their pool. And to be honest with you, I think they're going to be better than the Dominican team. Only time will tell. But I honestly like it. I don't exactly hate it as much as what most people do. So again, we'll see it. I see it in the contrary. I understand injuries. I understand not wanting people to participate. But at the same time, I view this more important than the Olympics. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll see. One cool thing I think is when players get opportunities. Duque Hebert for Nicaragua struck out 3 guys. He gets a contract with the Tigers. That's the kind of stuff I like to see at the WBC. But that's all the time we have. Wednesday, previewing March Madness with Alec Crowdhamel. Stay tuned for that. But I'm Eddie Kalegi.
And I'm Tim Moore.
Signing off of Sports Speak. Follow us on Twitter at Sports Speak Live, and we will see you on Wednesday.